This is the new Canon R6 Mark II, an all-round improvement on that original R6 that was released 2.5 years ago now. It has a 24.2 megapixel sensor this time, and a much faster sensor readout speed as well. Much more comprehensive video features, and it inherits some of the autofocus and high frame per second stills performance of the R3. This is a very capable camera indeed, be it for stills or video work. But for this video, as usual, let's just concentrate on what the R6 is actually like to use for video users. I want to start a little differently to normal with some of my own personal thoughts, because I have personally been pretty critical of the original R6, both in public and in meetings with Canon behind closed doors. And it's a lovely camera, don't get me wrong. Canon say this is their best-selling camera in the lineup, and I definitely believe them. As a stills camera, it's just fantastic, and ergonomically, it's a dream to use. My frustrations are on the video side of things. I'm sure we all remember the overheating issues and concerns when the R5 and R6 were both released. Now, they did improve things over time with firmware, but the crucial thing that the R5 always had, which the R6 never got, was a 4K mode which you could use without running into overheating issues, and even use once the camera overheated. The R5 had that with its lower quality 4K mode, and it meant that whatever you ran into while you were working, you could always carry on in some capacity. While on the R6, if it overheated, you just had to wait. For some, that wasn't a big deal at all. For some, it was a real deal breaker. And for me, it was incredibly frustrating. As in all other aspects, it had a huge amount of potential to be a really fantastic mid-range hybrid camera from Canon. I just couldn't help but see it as this big missed opportunity to create something really special, which would have been exactly the camera that Canon had been asking for from Canon. But that was the R6, and we now have the Mark II. And this fixes not just that huge overheating issue, but a whole collection of other improvements as well. So now that the air is clear a little bit, I've got that out of my system, let's leave the original R6 and my frustrations with it behind us and look forward to the Mark II, because this Mark II might just be exactly the camera that I had been hoping for. For video recording, we get the choice of 4K 50p, 4K 25p, 1080p 50, and 1080 25p as the main base frame rates here in the UK, all in either regular IPB or long GOP mode, or Canon's compressed light version. There's no all-eye recording here, unfortunately. And just like on other similar Canon cameras, it's 8-bit H.264 in normal color modes and 10-bit 422 H.265 once you enable C-Log 3. There's also a high frame rate mode, which is 1080p with the choice of 100 or 150 frames a second. There's no audio in this mode, but you do get autofocus, which is nice. And there's no crops here with any of these modes, including 4K 50p. There is an optional crop mode, which you can use if you want, but the camera doesn't force you into it at any point. Overall, these recording options are alright, some great frame rates there, but the codecs might disappoint some. All-eye would definitely be nice to have here, and I'm still not a fan of being forced into H.265 once you enable log. However, it is a lot less of a problem now than it used to be a few years ago. Modern computers handle H.265 really well. For example, we're now exclusively on Apple's M1 Max here in the marketing office, and they handle it amazingly well. So for us, H.265 is exactly the same quality and speed as all-eye, just at a third of the file size. So this is great. We actually choose to use H.265 on all our cameras for these videos. But it's always better to have a choice for these things rather than being forced into it without the camera even really telling you it's happening. I can't show our usual image quality tests here, unfortunately, as this is a pre-production sample which isn't quite ready for those in-depth tests. However, I am quite hopeful. The original R6 did a great job with image quality, and this still oversamples down from its 6K sensor to achieve its 4K modes. So fingers crossed, should perform pretty well with a nice low noise floor and detailed pictures. There's also raw output over the HDMI port, even if it is only a tiny micro HDMI port again, which is a bit of a disappointment. But once the camera is released and becomes supported by recorders like the Atomos Ninja 5, this will give us access to the full resolution of the camera, 6K at up to 60p. So I'm looking forward to trying that out. We did a simple record time test to get a rough idea of battery life and overheating performance. There's no 30-minute record time limit anymore in any mode on the R6 Mark II, so we set the camera to record regular 4K 25p with a fresh battery and 128GB SD card, and it lasted for the full 1 hour and 46 minutes before that 128GB card ran out. The battery still said half remaining, and there was no sign of any overheating warnings, and the camera was barely warm to the touch. The official line from Canon is that 4K 25p won't overheat, while 4K up to 60p will last around 40 to 50 minutes of continuous recording, and the high frame rate 1080p at up to 180 frames will last around an hour. So if you'd like us to do more comprehensive tests of this and what happens when it does overheat and all of that, let us know in the comment section, and we're going to try and get around to organising that once we actually get our hands on a final production version camera. Perhaps the area I was most surprised to see so many improvements in are the assist tools and functions that this camera has. The biggest surprise of the lot though for me was that we now get false colour. Up until now, Canon mirrorless cameras have normally had zebras and a small histogram which disappears when recording. That's all the exposure tools they've normally had. But now we get a full false color function, just like on Cinema EOS. You can put it on an assignable button, it has the index guide built in. It's exactly the tool I like to use the most for exposure, and I'm so happy to see it finally come to a Canon mirrorless camera. There is one small caveat that I've noticed. If you're in log mode, it works fine, but enable view assist onto that log mode so you don't have to look at a flat log image, and now it doesn't work, which is a bit of a shame. But even so, I am hugely happy that we now have false color here. I actually find it more useful on small cameras than waveforms, just simply because it's easier and quicker to see what's going on, and a waveform can end up so small on these little cameras. It's not the only nice new tool here though. We also get pre-recording, so for wildlife or events work, you'll be able to also save the last 3 or 5 seconds of video before you've actually pressed the record button, so you hopefully won't miss that important moment. I imagine this will impact battery life though, of course. We would need to test it, which we don't have time to do right now. But my advice would normally be to not use a mode like that unless you really need to. If you do really need to though, it is just a fantastic feature to have. It can really get you out of some sticky situations. There's also focus breathing compensation in the lens correction menu. This applies a small crop to the image in order to compensate for any breathing that your specific lens might have. Something which we've seen Sony actually start to do now as well on their latest cameras. At launch, this is only going to work with the new 135mm f1.8 that they've also launched today, which looks beautiful, and the 24mm f1.8, and this 15 to 30mm f4.5 to 6.3. But there will be a firmware update coming soon, Canon say, which will add pretty much every RF mount L series lens. They've also added a second level to the quick access screen, which gives us some menu options which we can easily use with the touchscreen, a bit like on the C70 and R5C. With this, we can access the optional crop mode, relay recording, Canon log, HDR, and your recording resolution. There's also new connectivity options with a new phone app, better Bluetooth support, and the option to actually use a cable with the app as well, which is amazing for when you just don't want to have to deal with Bluetooth. Plus it has UVC and UAC support, which really simply means that you can just plug it straight into a computer and the computer will see it as a webcam in Teams or Zoom without any extra software needed at all. Perhaps the improvement which will make the most significant impact onto the average day-to-day video shoot though is the MI shoot on the top, which you can use to attach Tascam's XLR adapter like this. This is the same as we've seen on the R3, R5C, R7, so it's becoming fairly standard across Canon's lineup, which is excellent. If you record audio onto these cameras, this is a must-have purchase for most people. It is just as simple as that. Just like the R7 before it, the R6 Mark II inherits the autofocus system that Canon first developed for their flagship R3. This means you can access face and eye detect in every single autofocus mode and gives you access to these 3 flexible box zones as well. It's a fantastic system and definitely my favorite on the market to use right now. It's very easy and simple to get the hang of and works brilliantly. The subject detection modes have also had an upgrade. Animal mode will now recognize horses and vehicle mode will now recognize planes and trains. Plus in any of these modes, we can now select subject only, so that it'll only ever autofocus if it sees that subject it's looking for. It'll never drift onto the background or some other subject or anything like that. Just like false color, this is a feature from their Cinema EOS cameras, which I am very happy to see here as well. Overall, I've been hugely impressed by the R6 Mark II so far. It is early days. This is a pre-production model which we haven't been able to do our regular image quality tests on or anything like that, so we're going to have to wait for a production model before we can do more comprehensive tests and really understand the camera. But this is never really going to be a camera for the most demanding video users that need that incredibly high quality. The R5C and C70 and above exist for that. This is for the more everyday video creator, if you like. You know, people making videos just like we do here, or corporate videos, or social media, or events, anything like that. And in my opinion, for all of that kind of work, the practicality of the camera as a working tool is just as important, or probably actually more important, than image quality. And I think Canon have nailed that with the R6 Mark II. 8 stops of IBIS, fantastic autofocus, long record times, decent battery life, false color to get your exposure right, no crops between your recording modes, and of course fantastic stills performance as well. That goes without saying. Is this a perfect camera? No, definitely not. But it certainly seems like a really practical choice for working hybrid professionals. Canon know how to make a practical camera which people enjoy using, and early signs point towards the R6 Mark II being one of their best. If you want to buy one for yourself, then head over to proev.co.uk, and if you have any questions at all, just let me know in the comments section down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.